Well, here we are at episode 10. We've made it through to 10 episodes. Never thought we'd get this far. Yeah, but here we are. Anyways, it's me, Chucky, from the forums as usual, and we've got the G-Man, or the J-Man.
G-Man doesn't seem to do well for me. Hope everybody.
G-Money.
If people would like to call me G-Money, that's cool.
Okay. Anyways, another 5 movies, as always, to discuss. First up, we've got Arachnophobia from 1990. Interesting movie about spiders. And then we're going to talk about a Stephen King adaptation from the 90s, Thinner, about a guy who just keeps getting thinner and thinner. It's wild stuff. And moving on to an utterly ridiculous movie, Sharknado, the sci-fi original cult classic, I guess you can call it, from 2013. And we've also got Roadhouse from the late 80s, featuring Patrick Swayze. And then we've also got Jaws to finish us off from 1975. And we all know what Jaws is about, I'm guessing.
Indeed. So, first up, we have Arachnophobia. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a classic, but it's probably one of the horror movies of the 1990s. A South American species of spider finds its way to California, small town California, and it somewhat decimates the town. People try to fight the spiders back as soon as they find out about them. Most of them die, so some good stuff. I don't want to spend much time on the plot because I think it's a movie that if you haven't seen and you go into not knowing much about it, I think you're probably going to be somewhat impressed. It's been a movie I've enjoyed for years and years. It has a fantastic cast, in my opinion, Decent, pretty good music. It has pretty much, in my opinion, most of what you'd want out of a somewhat light-hearted insect invasion type movie. There's quite a few things about this one I sort of want to, try to get into. But before that, I will let Chucky tell us his feelings.
Yes. So Arachnophobia, that's a movie that I actually watched quite a bit when I was younger, and clearly, watched quite a bit, so I obviously enjoyed it. Then I watched it again recently, still enjoyed it quite a bit. I guess the only thing that's kind of changed now is that now I've seen, more movies, and I've seen other movies that these cast members have been in, and maybe, just maybe that doesn't necessarily affect my enjoyment of the movie, but it just makes me think of some silly things at times. I mean, we've got Jeff Daniels in this, and he went on to do a movie like Dumb and Dumber. So, and I'm thinking of him in Dumb and Dumber, and then going back to this. It's like I said, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the movie, but it does make it a little more difficult to take his character as seriously as it probably should. But especially since there's another character in this movie called Lloyd. So you've got Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber, you've got Lloyd in this movie, equally a dumb individual.
He's an intelligent guy.
Bit of an idiot for a town sheriff, but anywho, I think in terms of spider movies, this is probably the best spider movie out there. I know there's some other ones out there, to be honest, I probably haven't watched too many of them, or at least not many of them come to mind.
Yeah, I can honestly only think of one spider movie I think might be as good as this one.
I know I've seen a few, but they're just not coming to mind, so this is probably the best spider-themed movie that I can think of. Like you said, there's a good cast in the movie, aside from Jeff Daniels as Julian Sands as John Goodman, and a few other veteran-type actors in the movie.
Plus the guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, randomly.
I've probably seen that movie once when I was young, so I don't really recall which actor you're speaking of. But
it's actually Lloyd, the sheriff.
Okay. Yeah, and there's this one old guy who I remember seeing in Total Recall, and he plays the mortician guy. The guy just won't stop eating. That's all he does in the movie. He's just eating in every scene, I think. Even leaves the party with 2 full plates of food, I think. But
he seems like a pretty nice guy, though, so...
Oh, yeah. Just loves his food. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty enjoyable movie. The spiders in the movie, whatever they did there with the effects and everything, I think they did a pretty good job. I don't really notice, if there's fake spiders. I'm sure there's some real spiders in there, but I wasn't looking around saying this one's fake, this one's real. So they must have done a pretty good job in that. It makes me think of the movie The Beyond, where there's a scene with spiders. Some of them look real, and some of them clearly are just like bouncing off a string or something.
I'll say that's probably one of the things that Arachnophobia does best. Just the spiders look, compared to almost any other spider-based horror movie, they seem like pretty realistic for the most part. So yeah. I always, it's like half the sci-fi movies that have spiders in them, they barely look like spiders. So I'm happy this has a somewhat realistic feel to it.
And you probably talk more about this than I would, but we can mention John Goodman's character. He doesn't have a huge role in the movie, but it does pop up, especially towards the second half of the movie. And he's got a bit of a funny, quirky type character.
Plus, it's a pretty good theme music, so.
Yeah. Yeah, like the scene where he squishes one spider and then Julian sounds like, "Did you bring one back?" And it's like, "Oh, there might be a bit of it on my shoe."
I mean, in terms of enjoyment, I think this movie is almost, I have a hard time believing somebody can watch this and not just have a little bit of fun. Like, so it's a somewhat lighter movie, but this, that scene toward the end when the spiders are swarming the house. I mean, no, I don't know about you, but I'm not necessarily big on spiders. So that scene has always been a bit more terrifying when I was a kid. And, watching it even today, I somewhat cringe a bit because those spiders look decently real, and especially when they're coming out of like the sink. That scene just freaks me out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from a country where spiders are quite common, so...
Yeah, I was trying not to be cliche. But...
Yeah. But I mean... Being completely honest, I'm not a fan of spiders either. I'd much rather them outside than inside. So, I mean, I'm not trembling in fear when I see a spider, but I don't want a spider near me. So, even though most of them are harmless, but it's just one of those things where you just don't want this creepy crawly all over you. I probably also wanted to just mention the stupid old man doctor in the movie. And that guy just is a bit of a annoying dick.
Yes. Although, I mean, he does have a heart of gold. He was having I think it was a seizure, and he says, "Hey, we should call the new doctor." So.
Well, the funny thing about that, he spends pretty much the entire time before that ripping the guy, saying, like, this guy, medical malpractice and all this kind of stuff. And then suddenly he's having a seizure. He's like, "Oh, call him, get him over here."
Who's he going to call, the sheriff?
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, who else is he going to call? But at the same time, he literally just said, like, you saw this person, this old lady patient who was a patient of mine, suddenly like a day later she's dead. So what you think is the same going to happen to me? I guess you're not thinking about that type of thing when you're having a seizure or you're about to die, but still.
On a related note, no, I've not actually seen Dumb and Dumber, so when I think of Jeff Daniels, I don't think that. I actually think of HBO series called The Newsroom, which I sort of enjoyed. But I think Jeff Daniels' character in this movie is pretty sympathetic. I mean, he literally uproots from the city, moves to a small town with the belief that he will be the main doctor, and then boom, he's sort of screwed over by the dick who's sort of the doctor. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty sympathetic character, and I think, honestly, pretty much most actors in this movie do, in my opinion, a pretty good job. So I'm just really happy with the whole cast, especially John Goodman. who was just a really amusing character. It's not necessarily too different than many of John Goodman's other characters, but I mean, it's fun. You always enjoy having him on screen.
Well, I can recommend watching Dumb and Dumber. You'll laugh, you'll cry, it'll change your life. And it actually, just while we're laughing about that, I just recall the scene in this movie where he's... I don't know if this is something... I guess they used to do this back in the 80s and maybe early 90s, but where he's doing like a NAD inspection of all these boys. I don't recall ever having to let some doctor check out my nads like that.
Well, at least you got some good business done, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Then next minute when the kids drop stat.
Do you see his face when he's looking at each one, kind of looking but trying not to look, and then he kind of moves across to the black dude and kind of just pulls a bit of a face like,
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I like that one weak ass cough that one of the kids gives.
Yeah, you can cough better than that. I didn't see your balls twitch.
I mean, and that's just a small scene. There's so many scenes in this movie that just enjoyable. Especially Julian Sands' final scene. He's basically saying, "Hey, food's here." Spider attacks him, and he was surprised by that.
It's kind of, I guess, ironic that the guy who knows the most about spiders kind of gets attacked so easily and quickly, I guess, but anyways.
So this is a movie I've seen so many times. I saw it a bunch when I was a kid. I watched this, I think, just yesterday, and it was the first time I've seen it in, like, maybe 4 or 5 years or so. And I'm happy it's stored up just as well as I remember it did, so... It's definitely a movie I'd recommend, and probably, like you said, one of the best spider horror movies. I mean, in my opinion, I know this is a movie from the early 2000s called Eight-Legged Freaks, which is, somewhat popular, but this, that's like really over the top. And this one, I think, has a really nice mix of some lighter moments, but also some, generally, somewhat scary moments, so I appreciate that. I also just wanted to mention I really enjoyed the opening of the movie, 20 minutes before you even meet Jeff Daniels, which just sort of starting up where the spider comes from and how it gets to America. I think that type of startup really helped give a little more flavor to the movie. I mean, and also worth mentioning, the movie's like an hour and 50 minutes long, so it's not like one of those shorter movies that you might come across, so there's a little meat in this one, more than you might expect.
I can't say I really paid attention to the runtime, so I guess that's a good thing, because if you're looking at the runtime, you're kind of thinking, Jesus Christ, just finish already, and if you're not doing that, then I guess you're enjoying the movie.
Well, I enjoyed the movie anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes you look at the runtime regardless if you're enjoying it or not, but I think if in most cases where you're not enjoying a movie, you tend to look at it more.
I do remember Only God Forgives.
Oh, that's not nice.
Well, Arachnophobia is a flawless movie. There's not a thing I dislike about it. Fantastic cast, fantastic music, fantastic effects. Just fantastic. Everything's fantastic. I give it an easy 10 out of 10.
Whoa. Okay. And if John Goodman wasn't in it, your score would be lower?
Yeah, it'd probably be like an 8 out of 10, but even so, fantastic movie. Yeah. I legitimately enjoy this one, and I definitely recommend it to people if they haven't seen it.
Well, I guess since I don't have the same John Goodman fetish that you have, I'm going to go with an 8. I was kind of balancing between a 7 and an 8, but I think, like I said, it's probably the best spider-themed horror movie that I can think of. And I watched it a lot when I was young, and so it's one of those movies that has kind of stuck with me for quite some time. Good effects with the spiders and all. A pretty terrifying ending, I guess, for people who are not all that fond of spiders. So, there's some big juicy motherfuckers there at the end.
I sort of like how even after that spider was set on fire, it comes after him again.
Yeah. It's, actually, when that happened, it reminded me like of, my all-time favorite movie, Child's Play, how he gets burnt at the end, but he keeps coming back. And I was thinking the spider's a little bit the same. Gets supposedly killed at least a couple of times and kept coming back. Yeah.
I thought Jeff Donner's reactions was just fantastic. Like, he's so tired of that spider.
Yeah. So the next movie up that we're going to talk about is a Stephen King novel adaptation called Thinner from 1996. It's about a man named Billy who's an obese lawyer. And one night he gets distracted by some epic blowjob action and accidentally runs over an old gypsy lady crossing the street. So the old lady's father ends up putting curse on him and also on some other men who played a hand in assisting Billy with dodging any form of punishment or legal implications from the accident. Now, I mean, Stephen King novel adaptations, I mean, as you know, I don't read the books, so the novel themselves doesn't really play any part in my enjoyment of the movie. And with this one, it's an okay movie. It's certainly not a great movie, not a terrible movie either. I mean, the story itself is pretty decent, I guess, as you could expect from someone like Stephen King. It's just that I don't think most of the characters in the movie are actually all that interesting. Like the lead actor, he kind of bugged me a little bit. For some reason, I kept thinking, this Charles Grodin-looking motherfucker. He's just, I don't know. Something about his face just made me want to punch it. And I just recently looked at some of the other movies he's been on. I realized he played RoboCop in RoboCop 3, which is a pretty terrible movie in comparison to the first two. So that kind of rubs me the wrong way as well. The ending also could have been, well, I don't know if it could have been better. I just didn't.
Well, I don't see how it could be worse, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, I just didn't. I don't know. The ending just. I don't know. I'll explain a bit more about why I perhaps didn't like it, but maybe I'll just get your thoughts on the movie.
So, this was a Stephen King novel originally published under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, if I recall. Now, I've not actually read the book, so luckily that's not going to be part of my take on this one. Even so, I've seen this movie maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and I find many of the performances in the movie somewhat underwhelming. I don't much care for the main actor. I think it's Robert John Borg. And some of the acting in this movie is just like really over the top and hammy, and like the ending is like it's somewhat dark ending, but it's also played in a somewhat cheesy way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, and I just think the movie needed it. If the movie does one thing right, it's the character played by Joe Montagna, which may or may not be how you pronounce his name, but it's the guy probably most well-known. Well, he's well-known for probably quite a few things, but I know him most from his long-standing role in the television series Criminal Minds.
Well, not to interrupt you, but
yes.
I know him mostly from The Simpsons. He does Fat Tony's voice, so...
Yeah, and I've never seen The Simpsons, so... Yeah, and he's also well-known for that. So, and he's I think he's decently recognizable, even if you don't necessarily, watch either one.
Do you actually realize that out of all the millions listening to our show, probably all of them, as soon as you just said you've never seen The Simpsons, their jaw just dropped and hit the floor.
Well, I am a Family Guy type guy. So, I'm actually not. But, although I have seen a lot more Family Guy than I have Simpsons. So, that's not how...
Well, you said you haven't seen any Simpsons.
I literally haven't seen a single episode of The Simpsons that I recall. Yeah. So, it's a fun fact. Not to disappoint anybody. But I do think Montagna is probably by far the best actor here. I think his character is pretty fun. And honestly, without him in this movie, I probably would have disliked this a bit more. Otherwise, I think the story's decent. I just don't know if the story needed to lead to a movie that was, hour and a half. It just didn't seem like that much story for this type of movie. If you watch the movie, I'm sure you can see some small things that are problematic. I think both of us, like we said, the Andy didn't really work for us, which is fun because, from my understanding, they had a different ending originally, but it didn't test well in audiences, and apparently this one tested better. So that's somewhat surprising.
Yeah. I'd say with the ending, at the end where he's got his wife in the bed and he's like licking the stuff off of her. I'm like, are you fucking stupid? I mean, you're not meant to have any of this stuff. Like, I know he kind of says, "Oh, I better not have too much" or whatever, but you don't know how much is enough. Maybe one lick is all it takes. I don't know. What an idiot. Just I don't know, things like that just kind of bug me.
Yeah, it's actually somewhat related. And you so mentioned this earlier. You said not many of the characters were interesting, and I would say not many of the characters were even all that likable. Like, the main character definitely isn't a likable guy, and I didn't honestly feel that much sympathy for him. Same thing with the wife. She just sort of annoyed me more than anything. And honestly, even some of the gypsy characters, I get the whole revenge thing, but there's not many characters in this movie that I actually enjoyed, so it makes it a little more difficult to enjoy the movie as a whole.
There's that one spicy enchilada. She was pulling up her skirt. I was like, just take it all off. Yes. She
is definitely worth getting cost over.
I didn't get to check out the rack. I need to see the rack. I need to know more about the rack.
Let's just say, if she had taken more off, I would not be thinner.
Does that make sense?
I don't know. But I don't know. For like a mid-90s Stephen King movie, this one's pretty, in my opinion, it's pretty subpar. There's definitely worse Stephen King movies out there, don't get me wrong, but this one, I don't know, it didn't do a whole lot for me. It was just, it's an okay movie, you can throw it on one night, spend some time with it, but I just have a hard time believing somebody can watch this movie and say, hey, they nailed it by the time the credits start rolling.
Well, just going back to that, the one actor, Joe Mantegna, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong too. But because he does a voice in The Simpsons, and the funny thing is, the character he plays in The Simpsons is actually the same type of character he plays in this movie, like a mafia boss type guy.
Well, he's a talent, so it's the same type of role he plays anyway. So.
Even though I enjoy him in the movie, at the same time it has this negative impact because I can't take the movie seriously with him, this character from a comedy show now trying to be this menacing type mafia type character in this movie, but his voice is exactly how it is in The Simpsons, and all I can think about is, his character from The Simpsons while I'm watching this movie. It's not really his fault, but at the same time, I must say, it just makes things a lot more difficult to take serious with this plot.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not entirely sure this movie is supposed to be necessarily taken that seriously. Well, I don't know, I know it has a case and some darker feel to it, but...
Yeah, it's got a bit from column A, a bit from column B, it's got a bit of serious, it's got a bit of silly, yeah. But then I'm thinking about, there's a scene earlier in the movie, kind of just after he's run down the old gypsy lady, where I think he's having breakfast or whatever, and he's talking to his daughter, and his daughter's worried, are you going to go to prison? I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, I didn't do anything wrong, or there was no crime, or, what I did wasn't a crime. I'm here thinking, wouldn't that be manslaughter? Isn't manslaughter a crime? What kind of lawyer are you?
Not if you are well connected.
Yeah. Well, Yes, but or maybe there's like a blowjob clause where, you know, if you're getting one, you're absolved of any wrongdoing for anything. So, which I could understand if that was a thing, because who can pay attention while you're getting that kind of action?
This is probably why you should not be getting that type of action while driving.
Yeah.
Just
well,
my opinion.
to be honest, I don't I don't think it's the most comfortable spot to be getting one. At least for me, I can't. You know,
I can imagine that. Like.
Yeah, I think there's many other places where it'd be much more pleasurable than especially when you're a fat guy in a car. I mean, wouldn't your belly kind of be up near the steering wheel? I mean,
that just adds to the fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have to appreciate the wife for, you know, I don't know, like, well done, I guess.
Yes, she's certainly won a few points, at least for that, but not really for anything else in the movie. Yeah, so Thinner. It's an okay movie. It's not a good movie. It's I just thought everything was a little underwhelming. You know, if you're looking for great scares or, you know, memorable scenes. I wouldn't say there's anything too memorable about it. Nothing that makes you want to go back and watch it again anytime soon. Anyways, I don't want to talk more about it. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. And for me, that's a pretty okay to mediocre type movie. Yeah.
Yeah, mediocre is probably a really good way to describe this. I mean, the movie's not horrible. It's not necessarily a bad movie. It's just it's very late in the movie that really gets the blood pumping. Yeah, it just
except the blowjob in the car.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to say that, but anyhow, if there's one thing the movie does well, like I said, it's probably Joe Montega, who I really enjoyed his character, even though his character also had some problems toward the end, but I enjoyed his character. Otherwise, I think most of the acting can be a bit goofy at times. The ending was, I feel like the ending could have been quite a bit better. So I will actually give this one a 6 out of 10, also, which is a below average rating for me. And this, I know, I just have a hard time seeing myself watching this anytime in the near future. It's just not much for this movie, so 6 out of 10 seems fair.
I agree.
Indeed.
6 out of 10 all up in this bitch.
Next, we have a true classic. Probably looking at the lineup of movies tonight, this may be one of the most classic movies we discuss. And that is the genius that is Sharknado from 2013. There is a hurricane leading into LA, Los Angeles, and it's a powerful hurricane, knocks over a few things. Also causes some tsunamis and tornadoes and sharknadoes because sharks get dragged up into the tornado, and this movie is so fucking stupid. Boy. Yeah, it's some good stuff, and some characters try to fight the sharks for some reason, even though they should just leave. But yeah, so it's a decently well-known movie. It's probably one of the more well-known sci-fi movies of recent times because it's just so over-the-top stupid. And there's 5 sequels, I think. So yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm sure the sequels are a lot worse than this one. I'll be honest, I didn't even necessarily think it was necessarily a bad movie, but it was. Well, I mean, it's called Sharknado. So, what are your feelings on this one?
Just when you're talking about the sequels, I actually looked. Well, you know, I looked this one up on IMDb, and then you see all the other recommended or whatever movies. So obviously, all the sequels pop up there, and you hover over them. And I noticed that the first movie is the one with the worst score. So.
Oh, I see that. It's interesting.
Yeah, all the other ones are a 4 or 4 point something out of 10. This one's got a 3.3, I think.
No, one of them has to do with time travel, and I just have a hard time believing the one that has to do with time travel. So. Better movie than this, but I guess I'll see. I actually have all 6 of these movies on my TV system to watch, so I guess I'll find out.
I don't have a whole lot of points written down, but I'll just tell you just briefly the 3 or 4 different points that I did write down. So I had ridiculous plot, shit effects, acting sucks, and hot waitress.
She was a pretty attractive woman.
Yeah. Anyways, I guess I'll just slightly elaborate on some of these.
Although you don't really need to.
Well, no, but I mean, you know, the movie kind of tells you exactly what it's about. Sharknado. It's like a tornado with sharks. So that's fine. I mean, if you want to make a movie with a ridiculous plot, that's not necessarily the reason why I think this movie's not very good. Now, like I said, it also has some pretty poor effects. Now, obviously, some people say, well, that's part of its charm, which may be true. I guess the thing for me is it doesn't have a good balance of seriousness and ridiculousness. Everything's kind of just off the wall crazy ridiculous to the point where I don't find it as... I mean, there's a lot of people out there who probably find it enjoyable in... Like, it's a good bad movie. One of those movies that's so bad it's good. However you want to say that. And I didn't necessarily think that it was a good bad movie either. I thought it was still pretty terrible. So, and I mean, if I compare it to another movie from the it's so bad it's good type category, I mean, let's take Samurai Cop. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that, but that's a movie that's actually kind of played out somewhat serious, but everything else is so ridiculous about it. And that's why that one, for me, works a lot better, at least is more enjoyable, because it's how silly it looks, because they're kind of trying to make a good movie, and they're just, you know, falling way short. Whereas this one, they're kind of like trying to make a ridiculous movie with a ridiculous plot, with ridiculous scenes and events, and, you know, it maybe if they tried to play it a bit more realistic with the ridiculous plot, then I would have enjoyed it more. I guess that's my big issue with the movie.
Out of interest, was the hot waitress your favorite character?
Oh, definitely. Well, I don't want to look at anyone else in the movie. The old dude from Home Alone, or I don't know, the lead character just didn't really interest me too much.
I really didn't care much for the lead character. I did like, I think in the movie he was supposed to be Australian. Yeah, so I enjoyed that character, but the main character was, in my opinion, somewhat boring. Especially the whole scene where he's saving the kids from the bus. That scene went on for like, I mean, I don't know how long. It felt like 5 minutes. Right? That scene just felt like it took, a bit much. Just shows what a great guy he is. But
I mean, to be honest, that scene, I mean, realistically, how many kids did he pull off that bus? I mean, it probably took him like half a day to do it.
it was impressive. So, and of course, after he saves the bus driver, then you see what happens to the bus driver later. So, I don't know, I actually probably had a bit more fun with this one than you did.
I'm sure.
Well, yeah, it may not be difficult, depending on what you gave this. I found, some of the characters, if not necessarily good characters, I found them somewhat enjoyable to watch. The ridiculousness of throwing bombs into the middle of the tornadoes to finish off the tornadoes, like that's the job you do, just was a bit, bit much. And the special effects were about as terrible as you can imagine. I sort of enjoyed when the sharks were coming down and they were chainsawing the sharks and shooting the sharks. This one guy chainsaws a shark in half before it lands. So that's some fantastic stuff. I don't think they even tried with the CGI, by the way. That's some of the worst I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen quite a few sci-fi movies, unfortunately. It's a somewhat hideous movie. But if you're in the right frame of mind, or if you're drunk, or if you're high, it might be an enjoyable time. Even if you're watching with a group of friends, it's probably a decent movie. If you're watching this sober, then I don't know necessarily how much fun you can have from it, but you might have a bit. I mean, the movie is pretty much, if you're watching a movie called Sharknado, you probably know what you're going into. So I don't know. It's a ridiculous movie. It's over the top. Some okay things if you're into this type of movies. I thought the movie wasn't particularly good, but I will admit to having fun. So I gave this a 5.5, and I'll probably round it up to a 6. So it's still a below average movie, but it's I don't know, it's not as god awful as some people might think it is.
Yeah, well, I think the IMDb score reflects it quite well. I'm gonna give it a 3. Yeah, like I was saying, ridiculous plot, which is okay to have if there's the right balance of ridiculousness and seriousness, and everything is just off the walls, crazy, and to the point where I didn't really enjoy the movie as it kept going along.
There was some drama between the father and daughter. That's pretty emotional.
I can't say I really bought her as being his daughter.
I know.
Anyways, yeah, just no. I mean, it's a movie that the further it got along, the more and more disinterested I got. Anyways, yeah, Sharknado, it can lick my butthole. Let's move on to something else.
Something arguably worse.
What? Anyways, Roadhouse from 1989. Pretty simple movie. It's about a bouncer who's hired to help clean up a pretty disgraceful looking bar in a small town. And along the way, he comes to find out that there's, I guess, this like crime lord type character who has this stranglehold on the town. And that's pretty much it. And, gets to a point where it comes down to a battle between this bouncer, played by Patrick Swayze, and this complete asshole, I guess. It's a pretty classic late 80s movie. I mean, I saw it quite a lot when I was younger. It's one of the few movies that I think my brother and I both enjoy. My brother's not necessarily big on horror movies, so he's not a huge movie guy in general, but the stuff he does watch is more this kind of stuff, I guess, or comedies. So it's got that kind of rare link that I have, something that we both enjoy. Anyways, it's one of those movies where I think Patrick Swayze's pretty badass. He seems quite invincible at times in the movie, and pain don't hurt. Yeah, I mean, it's also got Marshall Teague in it, who we discussed earlier when we were talking about A Dangerous Place. He's a bit younger in this movie, probably a little bit more menacing, and yeah, I think at some point he gets referred to as, Patrick Swayze talks about, if you're going to have a pet, keep it on a leash, and this guy kind of rolls out, he does kind of seem like a bit of a wild animal, so yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a movie where it actually has a bit of a blend of seriousness and ridiculousness, or silliness, if you want to call it, because it does have quite a ridiculous ending when you think about it. All this murder happens, and it kind of...
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. And then they go on to playing some kind of happy-go-lucky rock music. Anyways, what were your thoughts on this one?
No, I've never seen this movie before. It's one of those movies I've heard, pretty positive things about. I have some, friends who enjoy some 80s action movies say, hey, you should watch Roadhouse, and I finally did. So, I mean, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. I'm honestly, I haven't seen many Patrick Swayze movies. The only one that comes to mind is probably Ghost.
Well, you did see him in Donnie Darko last week.
Oh, that is true. I forgot that was even him. So, there you go. So I mean, I think the story I think is pretty interesting. I enjoyed many of the fight sequences. I thought some of the pretty good stuff. I thought a lot of the characters too were pretty decent. I thought there was quite a bit to like about this one, to be honest. Especially, I think it was a character played by Sam Elliott.
Mm.
And Sam Elliott isn't the actor I particularly know that well, but I did really enjoy his character and his dynamics working with Swayze. If there's one thing I had an issue with, it was the doctor in the movie. sort of the main romantic interest. And she played by a woman named Carly Lynch. And I thought the character started out okay, but toward the end, she just sort of annoyed the hell out of me. She said some things that didn't make much sense to me. She was pissed that, after he defended himself, and he happened to kill someone in self-defense, and she was angry about it, which, I mean, I don't know, call me crazy, but I didn't get it. I think he was in total right to defend himself, so I don't know. She's attractive, but she just annoyed me at times. Otherwise, I think many of the characters are enjoyable. I think the main antagonist was pretty good. There's a few over-the-top moments, like the whole monster truck thing. Like, I can't see a monster truck driving through an auto shop, like that. I just can't see it. But, hey, it's cool. It's a small town. Maybe that's what happens in small towns. So, I thought it was a decent amount of fun. And generally speaking, an enjoyable movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a part of the silly or ridiculous nature of the film. There are a few scenes where things are just it's got like this slight comedy feel to it, even though it's still a fairly serious type action drama.
Also, I just realized that Patrick Swayze was in Point Break, which I have also seen. So
yeah,
that's all I have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's one of those actors that, I mean, he died, well, I wouldn't say young, but much earlier than most people should, so it would have been nice to see him stick around and be in more movies, because I quite enjoy him in a lot of different things. So. He seems like a fairly nice guy, from what I've heard. I guess one thing that kind of... Something I just got to bring up is that I guess back in the 80s, you know the bar called the Double Deuce. Back then, the word deuce, I mean, the only time someone ever says that to me is when they're talking about taking a shit. So, I mean, was that not a thing back then, I guess? Just naming the bar like Double Poop.
I mean, to be fair, it was a pretty shitty bar, so I mean...
Well, at least until Dalton came in and cleaned it up pretty good.
Yeah, it cleaned up really nice. That was a really nice looking facility toward the end of things.
Yeah, but before, I guess the owner described it pretty well. It's a place where they're mopping up the blood at the end of each night.
I enjoyed the first time it showed the bar. I'm like, dude, is it band playing behind a cage? And like, people just randomly throw up beer bottles at the bar. I'm like, who the hell does that?
Poor blind dude. I guess he needed it more than anyone else because he won't see a bottle coming his way.
That's a nice tasteful humor. What on?
Yeah.
I do think that one fight scene with I forget what the guy's name is, but I guess what I call the main fight scene of the movie, I thought that was a pretty decent fight scene. Just intense. So I enjoyed it.
It's just there's a lot of enjoyable moments throughout the movie. I wouldn't say too many things that all that memorable, but I just think it's one of those movies that's kind of just enjoyable from start to finish. It doesn't do anything spectacularly well, but it's a pretty good movie.
Well, I'll just simply say that Roadhouse is a pretty fun movie. I'd never seen it before, so I had a good time with it. And I definitely recommend if you're a fan of 80s movies. It's not necessarily amazing, but you can easily have a good time with it.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I don't think I really need to explain too much more as to why, because I pretty much spent the whole segment explaining that. So, just, good movie from start to finish. Some decent performances in the movie. And it's got a bit of a nostalgic feel for me, especially being a movie that I watched quite a bit when I was younger.
No, I really liked Patrick Swayze's speech. The 3 rules. I had some fun with that.
Yeah.
Be nice, and if you're taking them aside, be nice.
What if someone calls my mama a whore? Is she?
Yeah, he's a pretty suave character. I enjoyed him. So I really like this one. I'm not as critical with non-horror movies, so This is one I'm giving a 9 out of 10. I thought it was a thoroughly enjoyable movie. I can't think of any big problems aside from the one character who just sort of annoyed me at times. Like I said, she's an attractive actress, but her character just bothered me. So, I don't know, 9 out of 10 seems fair, and it's a movie that I would certainly recommend.
And it's got some titties in it.
It has a lot more nudity. I'll be honest, I didn't expect any nudity from this movie, so, like, there's quite it's not like over the top, but there were quite a few scenes of some, that might cause some lustful thoughts.
You know me, I gotta mention the titties if they're there.
Indeed. And even if they're not there. So it's a good movie, If you like nudity, you should watch it for that. Lastly, we have a somewhat well-known movie. This one may not be able to compete with Sharknado, but it does have a shark in it. And this is the 1975 classic directed by Steven Spielberg, Jaws. Basically, this pissed off shark is attacking people, and this one local sheriff is not happy about it. And of course, the mayor of this island town makes most of the money during the summertime with vacation is coming in. Wants to keep the beaches open despite the attacks, and there's some tension there. A lot of boring stuff happens. Then things actually get interesting toward the second half of the movie, when it's basically just the actors on a boat, and they find themselves face to face with the shark, just trying to, and this thing just keeps coming after them again and again. And it's that's probably one of the there's a lot of tension going on, and I really enjoyed the second half of this movie. It's, and that probably explains my view as well. I found the first half, it was decent a lot of the time, but there's some scenes which just, didn't do anything for me. And I know this is a classic movie, and, I definitely think it's a decent movie, but it took a little for it to really get going for me. And like I said, when the three guys are on the boat, the sheriff, the hunted guy, Quinn, and the oceanographist, Hooper, that was when the movie really picked up for me, and I pretty much enjoyed it from that point on. But, I don't know, otherwise, it's, first half just didn't do much for me. But what were your thoughts on this one?
I'm more or less on the same track as you. It is, clearly it's one of those movies that is just considered a classic by all means. It's directed by such a popular director, and I don't think there's too many people out there who doesn't know what Jaws is. So just by being considered a classic, I think a lot of people tend to call it this great movie, and maybe in some people's minds it is a great movie. It's certainly a movie that my father would watch. Not that he watches a lot of movies, but it's a movie that he had seen a bunch of times, and so I guess that's a big thing for him. I think it's a little bit slow moving at times. Like it's never like dull, but I think just some scenes just drag on a bit too long. Though it is quite suspenseful, especially with all the different scenes involving the actual shark. They do kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, I think, for the most part. The music in the movie stands out. It's one of those things where no matter what you're doing, you could be playing in a pool and someone starts trying to do the Jaws music, Yeah, I guess it has that effect on people. So whoever did the music in the movie, I didn't actually look, but clearly they did a great job with it, and I'll say that much for it. But yeah, no, I think it's a decent movie, just not one that I enjoy over all these other movies that we discussed. So, well, I'm not talking about today's show. I think it's way better than Sharknado. I hope you're joking when you say Sharknado is better.
Well, you will find out. Because I guess my main point is, which movie is more enjoyable?
Jaws.
Yeah, and Jaws is a often dry movie, despite all the water. So, yeah.
Did you write that down?
I actually did not. My wit does not. It's just not true. Anyway, this is a movie that you may or may not have seen. It's sort of like a ripoff of Jaws that came out a few years later, starring Richard Harris called Oka from 77. And that movie, I thought, in my opinion, I legitimately thought that movie did a better job of showing like the fight between nature's animal and is just compared to the size of in that movie it's a whale, but just nature versus men, and this movie does a decent.
Who's the real animal though?
Well, I will say Quinn the hunter. He grew on me a bit, but a lot of the time that character just sort of annoyed me. Is the guy really worth $10,000? I mean, I don't know. I guess if the town isn't that much of a desperate situation, why not pay him? But
I guess you'd have to also consider back in the mid-70s, $10,000 would be quite a lot of money.
Indeed.
At least compared to now.
No, I'll say those three main actors, Roy Snyder, Robert Shaw, and Richard, I'll say Dreyfuss. I have no idea. Yeah, he's probably famous. I don't know the guy. But I thought he did a pretty good job. His character, Hubert, he had some issues, but I thought he was a legitimately enjoyable character. And there's a lot of decent scenes. I do enjoy that one scene. I remember when I was a kid, the scene bored me. But when they're comparing the scars they have from the pasts, and that one story about the ship sinking and the sharks, I thought it was a well done scene. And that scene's quickly followed by another fight with the shark. I don't know. And of course the ending's pretty fun too. The ship is almost entirely sunk and it's just like last few seconds, man versus beast, who will win. It's fun. It's not it's not surprising by any means. I'm pretty sure people expected it, but it was pretty fun.
Mm.
And just another note, this is also based off a novel, and I'm not sure how popular the novel is compared to the movie. I'm suspecting maybe 50% of the people who have seen the movie don't know it's based off a book. That's a made-up statistic, but it seems right. I've actually read the book, and the book is probably actually a little more dry than the movie. But it's still an okay book. But I would say the movie might be, more enjoyable form.
One thing, I mean, on our Facebook page, I've been posting a lot of like memes and things like that. And there was one that I posted that was Jaws related about the boy in the movie that dies earlier in the film, the Kitno boy. And, it's just like a rest in peace type thing, saying he died on this day 40-something years ago or whatever it was. And I had a bunch of people reply saying he didn't die, or, he didn't die, did he? Like, I'm watching the again. I'm like, he clearly fucking died. I mean, he probably has the most memorable death in the movie, to be honest. I would go that far. Actually, I won't go that far because I think Quinn's is pretty epic. But
spoilers. Because you haven't seen Jaws before.
Yeah. Anywho, but I mean, I do enjoy his scene, even though it's kind of only a couple of seconds, where it's kind of like this geyser of blood in the water, but there's multiple parts in the movie where they're clearly referring to him as being dead. I mean, even his mother, when it seems she's just come back from his funeral or something, and she's slapping the chief saying my boy's dead, and she repeats that like 2-3 times at least.
I'll be honest, I felt bad for the sheriff then, because obviously it's the mayor's fault, so that's just disappointing.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the mayor, I forget who plays that guy. I sort of enjoy it. It's been a long time since I've seen this, and I watched it earlier today. I enjoyed after the sheriff's son was, part of an incident regarding the shark. I enjoyed how he sort of turned around and said, hey, I'm sorry about this. You can do what you have to do to take care of this. So I sort of enjoyed that characterization. Like, otherwise, he was an entirely unlikable character.
But I mean, the one thing that people say about this movie is that, it had a lot of people scared to go to the beach, and I guess maybe back in its earlier days, but to be honest, it never stopped me from going to the beach when I was young.
I've been to like the beach once in my life, so. Although obviously this movie did amazing in the theaters, so I know there's a whole generation of people who legitimately had that fare.
So this is a movie that I kind of struggled between what score to give it. I was kind of tossing up between a 7 and an 8 out of 10. And I think I've come to the conclusion that I think I'm going to settle with a 7. And I think the whole "it's such a classic" thing is a thing that's almost tripping me up. And I'm trying to not let that influence my rating, because generally I tend to give my ratings based on how much overall I just enjoyed the movie, and partially maybe the replayability factor. Like, how often do I want to go back and actually watch this movie? And with Jaws, it's not... I enjoy the movie, but I don't necessarily ever feel like, hey, I want to go back 2 years later and watch it again. Like, it's a movie that I don't care to revisit all that often. So, I guess I'm going to stick with a 7.
I think part of the issue with this movie is it's a 2-hour long movie. It's a long movie, and it certainly feels like it. I really do think the movie is pretty good once it's just the 3 main characters on the pretty small boat. I mean, it feels pretty claustrophobic at times, and I really do appreciate that when you're moving from the back of the boat to the front of the boat, just shimmying along the side. I enjoyed that. I never actually been on a boat to my knowledge, so, but it sounds fun. Assuming the shark's not chasing you. I enjoy quite a bit about the movie, but overall enjoyment of the movie is not particularly high. I appreciate what this movie does, but it's not a great movie. I would give this a 6.5, and I would probably round it up to an average rating of a 7. But when it comes to 70s movies, I can think of so many more. You know, like I remember when we spoke about Carrie. You know, I said that would make my top 50 70s horror, and Jaws also would definitely not make my top 50. So, yeah, it's okay. You know, you can watch it every 8 years and be happy in life. So.
Well, I'm just glad to see that you've given it a higher rating than Sharknado.
Yes, yeah. I was just trying to lead some suspense. Jaws is probably better than Sharknado.
It is. Yeah.
It's
There's
probably.
no probablys. It is.
Just a bit. Now, if Spielberg had directed Sharknado, we might be talking about a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I actually have one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a deeply controversial question. Is Jaws a horror movie?
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that often gets debated by both fans of the genre and those who are not fans. And every now and again on IMDb, they throw horror in and then people get angry and then it gets taken off as a genre. So it's one of those borderline movies. And that's probably a reason for its success. If it had been more of a horror than it was a drama, I highly doubt this movie would have been as successful as it turned out to be.
It's probably more a thriller than a horror, but still, I mean, you've got this shark who's bigger than any kind of normal shark, and clearly killing people in some violent ways. So I think the fact that the shark is so huge, to the point where it becomes a monster type character, I think it's fair to say it can be considered a horror movie.
And I also want to throw in Quinn's death scene. I thought was, you know, obviously most people have seen this movie, and if they haven't seen this movie, they're probably not going to see this movie. Quinn's death scene I thought was pretty fantastic. And, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily surprising, because after like an hour of just these 3 guys, somebody has to give. But I know it does take place pretty close to the end of the movie, so no, I thought it was pretty fun, pretty suspenseful, and I know the whole ship sinking. This guy has to shoot a tank in a shark's mouth. I had a fun time with it. You seen any interesting movies, Chucky, in the last 6 years?
In the last 6 years? That's very specific. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Okay. I tried.